Please be advised, this podcast may contain coarse language and adult themes and is not for children. Listeners' discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Remote Listening Party podcast, where we search for unique music and discuss it. I'm your host, Peter Boyle, and I'm joined by my co-host, Shaye McDonald.
Hey, everyone.
And Nicholas Voll.
Hello, hello.
This is episode 2, and if you haven't listened to the RLP podcast before, what we do here is we take turns presenting a unique album that the others haven't listened to before, give a brief introduction, and then listen to the album together before discussing it. We encourage you, the listener, to pause the podcast when prompted so you can listen to the album as well. So how are we doing, guys? What have we been listening to lately?
Doing well. I've been skirting several music sites that I really like and have been frequenting lately, and just looking for any kind of unique gems that usually what I'll do is I read a little bit of the description and kind of see if that sounds interesting, and then I'll listen to a little bit of the audio, and I don't know, sometimes you stumble upon something really cool that you wouldn't have otherwise in that way. I guess I like that method of discovering a little bit more than just using like the algorithms and stuff, because for me, although I do find things that sound cool with the algorithms, a lot of times it's kind of stuff that's already in my wheelhouse. So I don't read music reviews. I just look at music reviews for finding new music. That's it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, what about you? What have you been listening to?
I've been kind of bebopping around on some of my, playlists. My wife and I have a kind of a shared playlist that at this point I think is like 13 hours long, that we just kind of throw, the bangers on, the nostalgic songs, that sort of thing. We've had this playlist going for years now, but I've been throwing that on a little bit. I went back. I'd forgotten all about STS9. So I've been listening
I haven't heard them in a long time.
Yeah, I've been listening to some of them lately. I've only been kind of listening to the older albums that I'm familiar with, but they've got like a ton more stuff that I've never checked out that I've been meaning to get into.
Newer stuff?
Yeah, like recent.
Oh.
I'm not sure how recent, but I definitely a lot more stuff than the last time I was listening to them regularly. Been listening to a hip-hop artist / group. I'm not sure if there's multiple people, called Chinese Man. They're pretty interesting. And then I recently got a wild hair, and the other night was listening to a bunch of Roger Miller, getting into that.
Roger Miller is that Pink Floyd?
No, Roger Miller.
No, that's Roger Waters.
Yeah. Oh, Roger Waters, yeah.
Roger Miller is in like the guy who did like the soundtrack for the Disney Robin Hood movie, and has a few like of the old, I like folky, not really country. Some songs are kind of country-ish, but really folky. He's kind of silly and just doesn't take it real seriously, but it's just really happy-go-lucky, joyous music that is far outside of my normal wheelhouse. But just got a wild hair the other night, and over whiskey, I was just like, I want to listen to as much of this as I can. I just put his whole Spotify page just on play and was enjoying that for a while.
Nice.
Just needed a little whimsy in your life.
Yeah, whimsy, exactly.
Stuff.
Whimsy.
What have you been on, Nick?
A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Got into a little bit of Estelle last night. I don't know if you guys are. Estelle, she's like an R&B soul artist.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
She actually did the voice for Garnet in Steven Universe.
Okay.
There was a day a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week, where I came across Days Go By, the song by Dirty Vegas, and put it on repeat for like the entire workday.
Nice.
Why?
I don't. It was in my head when I woke up, and I'm like, well, yeah, I want to listen to the song, and then it's just like, well, it's easily loopable. It loops right back into itself really easily. So I just, it's a lot longer than I thought it was. Yeah. Oh my god, yeah.
Well, so Nick, you're actually presenting the album today. Do you care to tell us about it?
Sure. So the album I chose is Eco by David Maxim Micic. Said in an interview back in 2007 before a show in Budapest. So he is a Croatian artist who moved to Belgrade, Serbia. So he was performing in Budapest, and he said Ego, which is another EP of his, and Eco were experiments. Ego in particular, he really struggled with because he wanted to write music for the sake of being complex or heavy. Whereas Eco, the album we're listening to tonight, just came as a vacation pretty much. I didn't even feel like I was working at the time. Like I could write 10 more albums like that in the next half year. It just felt awesome. And I think it really comes across in the music. It just kind of like flows from him. Like it's his singular style. So yeah, I'm excited to share it with you.
Sweet. Again, today's album is Eco by David Maxim Micic. Please pause the podcast now to listen to the album.
Well, that EP is one of my favorite finds of, I think I found it last summer sometime. I put it on occasionally. That song, I think it was track 4, The Flock, is what I came across first. It's one of my favorite songs, like, of all time, still. But the overall feeling I get it from the EP, I find the contrast of atmospheric, moody instrumental sections to the kind of heavier, I wrote djenty detuned guitars, because djent is a genre. I'll die on that hill. And I really love that he's stated that he works mostly with guitars, drums, and like orchestration, so like stringed instruments, and it really shines through. But he has like other things that he sprinkles in, some of the ear candy we talked about earlier, Shaye. Like he's just got a good feel for how everything can fit together and transition so well, and I just love that in this EP.
Yeah, I think the 4th track was the standout track to me too. At least in this listen. Yeah, like you said beforehand, you were talking about how he did 2 records back to back. He did Ego and this one being called Eco, and how I haven't heard Ego yet, but I like this exploration of a kind of dichotomy here, and I don't know if he did it intentionally or if just after he finished doing Ego, if he needed to do Eco as a kind of release. But I like that exploration of Ego being kind of the intellectual exercise and Eco being sort of the release or the more just like free state exploration. And I think it comes through. I feel it, because even though there's a lot of technicality going on here, it's constantly, just from the very beginning, you see it in Universe in a Crown. It's open chords. It's big open spaces, big anthemic kind of feelings, and even the guitars are kind of, in a reverb space that feels. You called it gent. I don't know about that genre, but it feels gentle. It feels gentle. It feels welcoming.
No. Gent is not gentle.
Okay. Well, I may be wrong. Well, it feels the guitars feel like inviting, to me at least. So yeah, everything felt, it felt like there's a catharsis baked in to the album. It comes through like there's a, even though it's pretty heavy hitting at times, it's like a cathartic heavy hitting with these open chords and kind of like healing sounds, even like some of the ear candy that you talked about, like sprinkled in. It's like little dopamine nuggets.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, altogether it was, I got a lot of, by the end of the album, I kind of was completely under this cathartic trance, I guess, of just jamming out. I mean, it triggered some points of like nostalgia for me too. I don't know why. Maybe some of the guitar tones kind of took me back to like Halo days. I think that, I don't know why. But yeah, like I had, broadly speaking, I guess the visuals that I had were a lot of like electronic spaces but it was like natural, broad, open, starry skyscapes and, forest spirits and trees and, dancing lights in the forest. And it was good vibes.
I like that you said something about nostalgia, because I had written in my notes for the last track, but felt that it kind of tied to most of the album, that it feels like we never left the 90s or 2000s, just modernized the sound, because I don't know why. I think there's something about that saturation. Like, it's almost like I've been trying to figure out a way to say this, but it's like dipping chocolate in chocolate. It's like you've taken this post rock, this post metal sound, and like all these like anthemic like tones and everything, and you've just steeped it in itself to the point where it's almost cloying, but like it's not. It's so savory and it just feels so good. I'd written that he gives space to each part. It's almost like showing a house, taking time in each room. But it also feels very stream of consciousness, and really strings together the electronic moments with the post-metal and the jam elements and the rock vibes. Almost saccharine sweet at times, but feels like he let the music take him where it wanted. Insanely high production value. David clearly knows what he's doing, mixing and mastering, because every track felt so full, even when it was like a quieter song. I think that it's very obvious that his production skills are top notch, but it's not even like that was the high point of the album. There still was just, for some reason, this nostalgia vibe, because I think that it just took several genres of times past and steeped them within themselves so much, but still added, some extra value to it, that it felt so saccharine sweet, but it felt so right.
Maybe that was it. Maybe it was not necessarily Halo that it was reminding me of, but that time period. Like I think that's really what my brain just like latched on to that for some reason. And I think because I was listening to a lot of kind of open rock like that at that time. Some of the points of like that I like Carnival. Are you familiar with the band Carnival? I got some real Carnival vibes at times. Opeth, even like in the drums and the percussion at points. And just kind of the way the vocals and the grooves wrapped with the percussion. At the very beginning on track 2, I wrote Unitopia. That's like a prog rock band. And then there was a band, there's a point, I think it's in track 3? Yeah, track 3, where it like almost it goes into like a full dance beat.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of this band I hadn't thought of in years called The New Deal, from the early 2000s.
Oh,
I'm looking at this and I'm like,
about The New Deal.
I'm like, all of these bands are from the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? And like you said, it's it's kind of like it's drawing from that moment and modernizing it in a lot of ways. Like I love that what you said there about like steeping it in itself somehow.
It's just I can't get over it because it's almost feels like a parody at some points, or almost like, I don't want to use the word parody or like sarcastic, but it's just like it's so much of itself that it's more than the original thing. So that's, to me, the only way that I can really describe it is just like marinating in its own essence. It's just so much of it that it's overloaded.
Maybe that's why it feels so honest, though. Like why it feels so kind of effortless, and flows so well, because it feels like a pure expression of some tones and some movements and composition that this David, what's his name?
David Maxim
Micic.
Yeah. Maxim Micic. Maybe it's just like those are just the tones that he's super into. I don't know. Have you listened to more of his discography, Nick?
I really haven't, and I'm kind of ashamed to say it because like this is one of my favorite albums. I haven't gotten around to listening to his other works.
I definitely want to check out Ego, if you know, based on the comment that you said earlier, just to see how it contrasts to this. But there's
especially considering they were in the same year, like they were released in the same year at least.
But like from the very beginning in Universe in a Crayon, I had that quote that you were talking about in my head as that, and it immediately it's these big open chords, super super inviting, and then cinematic. I'm like, yeah, very cinematic. I had video game soundtrack.
I did too.
Elements, yeah, and there was, I don't know what the definition of a waltz is, but I feel pretty sure that it opened with a waltz.
It was in a waltz beat, yeah.
He did actually, real quick, he did actually work on a video game soundtrack. Hellion, I think it was.
That sounds familiar, but I don't know why. Let me see that.
Let me find that paragraph.
I loved how, like, Universe on a Crayon, the light piano set the stage. I've noted that it wasn't a waltz beat, which is very hard to pull off without it sounding like a tacky traditional waltz. And then building tension, but I loved how the other instruments started peeking in staccato, like just barely like glimpsing the instruments as they kind of like came in, and then they slowly just started to like build around like more layers of the track. Like
there was a lot of that. There was a lot of transition from staccato or arpeggiation to full openness of an instrument, or vice versa. And it was done so seamlessly throughout. And like I think at one point you even mentioned that transition between track 4 and 5, I think, is such a seamless transition in tracks, and it happens throughout the album. The amount of space between quiet moments and thunderous loud moments, the spaces feel like breaths, like breaths before the storm, so to speak. And every time the arpeggiation would come in, a lot of times like it felt like arpeggiated guitar or some kind of an effect on an arpeggiated guitar. It kind of added tension, this sense of tension, but it wasn't like overbearing. It was just enough tension to be like, okay, now when the anthem kicks in, there's a release there. So very, very good play on soft and big moments.
He had a really nice way with like little flourishes and whatnot, or as you guys keep referring to as like ear candy, but in Satellite I had noted there were so many micro sounds. Like there's so many things that were just like a quick, a split second that he just threw in there that just, it's not like I can say like, oh yeah, there was this one point where he did this one thing, but just hearing all those little micro sounds really elevated the sound.
Oh no,
added a lot of
there's
complexity.
a point for sure. The 500 seconds before sunset, there's a point in there where the acoustic guitar, which by the way has this really nice mix to it, where the strings, you can hear the rattling of the strings. That's how that's how honed in this mix is. And then it does a stereo split, and you've got two different really nice acoustic strums happening on either ear. And it's every once in a while, ever so gently cut in with a little glitch, like where it's like fizzling out and then coming back in, and it feels like, I mean, coming off of the track Satellite, I mean, it feels like it expands that feeling of being in an electro-organic space, if that makes sense. Like a space that's inspired by organic stuff, but beholden to an electronic mode, so to speak. I don't know, those are the vibes that I got. But from that point forward, I was paying attention to the stereo field that much more intensely. And yeah, like you said, the mixing is top notch.
Yeah, I think 500 Seconds Before Sunset was definitely the most like electronic sounding out of the whole album, but it's still like, I still noted the blend of the electronic and the analog and traditional sounds. It is still at no point in the album did I feel like I could say like, okay, yeah, this is an electronic album, or yeah, this is a post-rock album, or this is a electronic metal, or it just never really felt comfortable labeling the album in one way or another. It definitely had elements of all three of those and others, but it blended through everything so well.
Yeah, I mean, I kept saying like, there's lots of builds. There's a rock core, definitely, throughout the album, but the arrangements are unique, and the rock beat is often not straightforward. There's a lot of times it's either progressive rock, like kind of complex progressive rock, or off beats, or just straight up dance music beats, which is just an interesting choice. So it's kind of like throughout, just with his choices in mixing and instruments, and then the way that he composes with it, he's in. It feels like he's not drawn to just doing straightforward rock. He's always wanting to kind of subvert a little bit.
The strum guitar, because Shaye, you talked about the guitar sound on track 3, but also the start of Stardust, the last track. That strum guitar sound was so full, it was practically ASMR. I love when you hear a full strum guitar like that. It's so warm. It just feels so nice. And then that track, it started out, kind of that post sound again, but then it quickly started to blur the lines yet again.
Yeah. And when the vocal? No, that was on track 5 on Voda, where there's a vocal that comes in there, and it's so subtle. It blends so seamlessly that it's like you could almost mistake it as just an instrument in the mix, as like a pad or something. But I almost can't categorize it as choir, because I'm not sure how many layers there are there. It felt like a single person, a single vocal, but like it fits so well. That really was kind of like a healing sound for me.
And to speak to the layering even further, it just constantly felt like there were so many layers that it seemed impossible how clear he was making each of the layers and how full it all sounded while not sounding crowded or anything like that. Like, I'm quite jealous because when working on stuff myself, it just seems so hard to make distinct and full layers without fighting over certain bands of the sound wave that, like, you see, it seems like you're damned no matter what you do, and you either try and blend stuff or, simplify, but to be able to get that full of a sound and such distinct layers, like, he's a fucking magician.
There's a maximalism going on there too, like it feels like the entire frequency spectrum is taken. It's all used, and I think this album would be even a good study in mixing, because you can pick out by paying attention. He's got a really good knack for when to adjust loudness, and I think that's a little bit of the secret sauce of his mix. His mixing is to notice when elements become louder and when they become softer. And he's doing it to effect. This happens in all kinds of music, obviously, but like you can really, for me, I could really track it in this. Like especially with track 4, with the thunderous drums. In the beginning, I wrote, they take up so much headroom. You've just basically in the beginning there, you've got this gentle piano and you've got these thunderous drums. And the reason those drums are allowed to be so enormous is because there's nothing else for them to fight with. Yeah. And then as, there's an arpeggiation that comes in and it builds, and then subtly more elements are added and more are added, and then by the time the vocal comes in, you almost don't notice it. It took me a little while to notice it, but the drums were scaled way back, because they're no longer at the forefront. But then there were a couple of points in that same track where as the chorus begins, those drums just rip in again. And really cool mixing choice.
For that track, can we also talk about that breakdown that he had? It was very, very like harmonic and everything, but then he goes into that breakdown and suddenly it's very discordant, and it felt like it was suddenly zooming way out and kind of getting an idea of the whole picture, and just felt like everything felt so full in the space we were in, and then zooming out and like seeing everything else around it being this chaos and swarm before kind of like incorporating that all together. That was the coolest breakdown of the whole album.
That's interesting. I didn't really think about it that way. I was so dialed in towards the end there on the violin or viola that kind of comes in.
Yeah, that's sick too.
How well it fits. And part of what I felt made it feel so fitting was that it felt linked to the vocal. Somehow the expression of that viola felt emotionally connected to the vocal. And I'm not sure how. I can't pinpoint how, but I was like, oh, it's not just that it fits in the mix here. Compositionally, it fits. And to me, it feels emotionally linked to this vocal, which said, I picked up on a couple of it said, I follow light, this might take some time. And then there was another line where he said, I won't let my soul be another standard. It felt kind of like this crying out for salvation in some way.
You guys both seem to agree that the Flock was kind of your standout track, and I think it definitely was. But to me, even though I think it was the most different sounding track, it was 500 Seconds Before Sunset was my favorite there. I got to throw that out there. I got a strong Yippa vibe from that track. I don't know. I know Nick's listened to some Yippa. I don't know if you've listened to any, Shaye.
Some.
No.
And
then another strong vibe I got from the whole album was Anathema. I've loved Anathema for many, many years, and I feel like they skirt the line of being this saturated rock sound, that they're closer to the side of almost being edgelords than David is. But I definitely got some strong Anathema vibes there. Just that the really anthemic sounds, the really heavy emotional like feeling you get from it, the rock vibes, the savory guitars and everything. I got really strong Anathema vibe, but if Anathema leaned more into the rock and electronica, or the metal and electronica. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed Nick's submission of such a savory album for today. This episode has been edited for time, so if you'd like to hear the full, uncut conversation, please subscribe to our Patreon, which will have tons of additional bonus content. If you feel that we missed something today or disagree with us, please feel free to comment or contact us to let us know at remotelisteningparty@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you, and the most interesting comments will be read on a future episode. All right, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the RLP podcast. Please join us again next week as we listen to Absolute Elsewhere by Blood Incantation, presented by Peter Rosine. And as always, keep your ears hungry.